What's up, everyone? We are here with our Deeper podcast. Pastor Rusty.
How's it going?
It's going good. Episode.
Hang on a second. I got to take this. Hello.
Hey, check the Facebook post I just made. You can go look at it real quick.
Oh, yeah. Let me see if I can. Oh, sorry, bud. Sorry, bud. I got this thing activated. I told you I was going to, and now we're live. And I'm kidding. It's not.
I'm going to keep my comments to myself.
I really might. Like, before long, you may be getting green messages from me. You won't be able to send me, GIFs or GIFs or whatever the kids call it. You know, these short animated videos.
You won't be able to communicate with Rusty or talk to him.
That's my plan. I'm trying to just get completely incommunicable.
That was a big word.
Is a word used for the spread of disease. I'm just going to get a pager. I actually heard there's a really good deal on pagers. I think they're getting them from the Middle East right now, so may not want to use that. Too soon?
Oh,
Current
man.
events. Can we not?
Are you going to hold that the whole time?
No, I said, is it going to make you anxious? I'm going to put it here in case it rings.
It kind of makes me nervous. It feels like an ancient artifact. I don't know what it is. I actually had a BlackBerry for my first phone, so I'm not that young.
There you go. Yeah.
Huh? Mm-hmm.
Caleb,
you're a year older than me.
Caleb doesn't have a microphone. We're just having a conversation with him. He's off mic.
Oh, yeah, forget him. Nobody can hear.
That's good.
All right.
So, yeah, we're here.
Yeah,
Deeper
church.
Podcast, man. Church,
Jesus.
We had a good day yesterday.
We did, man.
It was a sweet service. Talking about something that if you haven't listened to the sermon yet, I'd encourage you to go do that because this will be a little out of left field, but fasting is something that we probably haven't talked about very much in the church.
No, we haven't talked about it.
Yeah, it's a biblical thing. Obviously, you read about it happening throughout the Old Testament. Individuals, even people groups, the nation would fast, and the church, certainly the people of God, Israel, and they would fast. And then in the New Testament, you see it, but it's just something that, for whatever reason, we haven't brought along with us today. So we're walking through the Sermon on the Mount, so naturally it's there. And we've been in this series where Jesus has really been thinking about or teaching us to think about the right way to worship him. Not in a performative way, but really with a heart that is doing things as an act of worship. So we've been talking about giving. We talked about prayer, and we spent a couple weeks really drilling down on the idea of prayer. And the way we started our message yesterday was talking about the reality of the distractions around us, that all of us all the time are bombarded with so many different things that it's hard for us to focus. And focus is pretty important for prayer. In fact, that's what Peter said in 1 Peter 4:7, be sober-minded for the sake of your prayers. You've got to have a laser-like focus if you're going to be a person of prayer. So if we don't know how to focus, if we live absolutely distracted in all of our lives and in everything we do, then how are we going to be men of prayer? So I've been trying to be more focused, and that's one of the reasons, honestly, real talk, I've wanted to go back to this. I had this out the other day, and my compatriots here, both immediately when they saw this, thought I had a burner phone and were very confused by it. That's the first thing both of these, Gen Zers here said. Burner phone? I said, no, this is actually a phone that I want to go to because it doesn't have all the distractions. Like, literally, I can get text messages or calls. So I haven't gone to that extreme, but I tell you what I have done, and you guys have maybe noticed this, that when you come in, if my phone rings while we're talking, it's like up here away from my desk intentionally because it does just kind of yell out, look at me all day.
Yep.
Check your notifications. You just got an email. Sure, there's like a 90% chance it's spam, but you should probably check it.
And then you should go to Facebook.
And you do one of those things, and then you go like through a checklist of Facebook. And so for me, we've talked about this too. I don't even use social as an active user other than running the church page from time to time. But I have a Facebook page that I use to do that. So I will keep up with the community pages that I want to add just to make sure, because, man, you can miss stuff. Like all of a sudden there's a parade in Buna that I had no idea about because I didn't have Facebook. So it's been helpful for me to have a dummy Facebook account. So all that to say, I don't even have friends on my Facebook page, and I can still find myself wasting time on these apps. I have a Twitter account that I don't have any friends that I know, but I follow pastors and sports figures and things like that. So even though I don't actively engage in social media, I can be distracted in social media. So all that to say, even as a non-social media, quote unquote, non-social media user, I'm a social media user that ends up getting sucked into that world. Or just opening up the internet browser, seeing what's going on in the world. That's how I can make those cool, relevant, maybe inappropriate jokes about people getting blown up with their pagers. That's a wild current event story that when we're done with this, we need to talk about. And if you listeners or viewers, do you know what I'm talking about at all? Do you know what I'm talking about at all? Okay. Most of our listeners and watchers do. When this stops, y'all remind me because we have to talk about this story. What do you mean by that? I mean that they are informed and y'all are not. That's what I mean. Y'all, you checked your fantasy football team or whatever, or ESPN or Facebook or.
Sorry, I was watching Shooter Sanders though.
Or Guitar Center, guitarcenter.com. That's Caleb. I'm pointing at him. Oh, not Guitar Center. Oh, R.I.P. Sweetwater music instead of CNN. But hey, y'all might be better for it. So anyway, yeah. So distractions abound. So how are we to find focus? Distractions abound. Just like the first 3 minutes of this podcast episode. So
what's up, guys? We're here with Deeper Podcast.
Take 2. So how are we to focus? Well, one of the tools that the Lord has given us to focus is this spiritual discipline of fasting. And again, it is funny. It's ironic. We talked about fasting yesterday. Our college students were over at Mallory and I's house, and we had peach cobbler and bluebell. Fantastic. Today, I had to go do some paperwork from some of the administrative work we got going at JNEC in Kirbyville. Texted my mom and dad on the way and said, hey, y'all want to meet for lunch in Kirbyville? And they said, yeah, why not? So I had at least like 1.5 chickens worth of chicken tenders on my plate today. Ate them all. So I am clearly not the one to talk to you about fasting today, but it is something interesting to think about from a biblical view. And what we said was simply this, that fasting is abstaining from food or something else. We'll talk about that in a second. But primarily abstaining from food for the purpose of drawing near to Jesus through prayer. So the idea is simply this. If we choose to fast one day from food or for one meal for food, the time that we would usually dedicate to that, the mental energy, every time we have that hunger cue or we think about food or we think about eating, we utilize that mental energy and time and effort into not food and eating, but instead to praying and seeking the Lord. So what fasting does is kind of gives us a super hyper intentional view of prayer.
Yeah. Focus. Yeah.
Yeah. So focus. Yeah. So, so we talked about food being the primary way that's been done. The scripture also talked about couples, married couples, abstaining from sexual intimacy for a season for the purpose of drawing near to the Lord. No one laughed audibly at my joke that I was going to fast from making jokes about that.
Literally no one besides Kate chuckled.
It was super quiet. It got so real quiet. I was like, okay, maybe this is the one that went too far apparently, but the jokes do write themselves. I just didn't use them. So I fasted from making jokes about that. But the Bible specifically talks about fasting from sexual intimacy within a marriage for spiritual purposes. But we said today there are extra biblical ways that produce that same reality of abstaining from something. So that second definition I gave is that fasting is abstaining from something for the purpose of drawing close to Jesus through prayer. So we talked about tech already this morning, or this afternoon. Certainly abstaining from social media for some people is often, so I'll just throw it to you, who you're a power user of social media for your side business and your youth ministry. Like those are tools that are important. So I'm not even throwing you under the bus as a youngin', but if you were to say, hey, on Thursdays, the time that I usually think about logging on to social and checking the soch and posting and doing those things, every time I have that inclination, I'm going to spend some time in prayer. How much would your prayer time go up on Thursdays?
A lot.
Right? Like, so TV for some people, like, if your rhythm is for Mallory and I, when we're in a TV season, we're not right now, but when we are, I've told y'all, it's like we live for get them kids to bed by about 8 o'clock, and then we'll go and watch an hour and a half of TV before bed. If you were to take that time and say, man, I'm actually going to replace that with some spiritual seeking of the Lord, reading the Bible or reading a book that's growing my faith and spending time in prayer, redirecting that energy toward Jesus to draw near to Him so that He will draw near to you. That's the idea of fasting. And it's a, again, kind of a revolutionary concept for a lot of people in our churches. I do think this is a pretty popular youth group bit. Is that fair to say? Did you ever do this in your youth ministry years? Did Brother Daniel ever have a time where he talked and encouraged y'all to fast from social media or from TV or something for a season?
Yeah, the only language of fasting that I ever really understood and knew was about social media.
Yeah, like
but that's just because it was the time.
Digital fast, yeah.
Well,
and you also shouldn't tell children who are literally in their physical development years, hey, don't eat for a day.
100%.
If your parents have a problem with it, email me at Daniel at Central Baptist. That's not.
But
a good
it really
look.
was. It really was to kind of get the distractions out of the way so you can focus on something else. And I did it for a little bit, and it was great.
Well, think about this, man. We're about to go on this retreat for the students, not this weekend, but next
100%.
weekend, right? What is one of the cool parts of this retreat?
They're not going to have their
They're not
phones.
on their devices, right? Like they when they withdraw from their devices.
If you have a student and you just heard that, please do not tell them because they won't come anymore. So please don't.
It's fine. I think they're kind of onto the bit, probably.
They are.
But one of the things that happens and even more so at camp because it's more time. Yeah. But all of a sudden it's like, whoa, God's showing up at camp and it's absolutely extraordinary. And we're like, I don't know why it surprises us every year when it's like, we all left our normal lives for a special week of seeking the Lord, and we set aside all the distractions of the world, of TV and our phones, and sought the Lord for several days. And whoa,
He's
God
there.
showed up and moved, right? So
it is so wild, man.
It's almost like if you were to try to, and this is what I want to encourage our listeners and viewers to do, is to try to incorporate some sort of fasting into your weekly rhythm.
Yeah.
So some examples that I gave yesterday that I'll just maybe go into a little more detail today. We don't have a meal on Wednesday nights anymore, but at the church I pastored in Koontz, Granny Smith, Vera Smith, a sweet lady, man. I love this lady. If she was here right now, the podcast would be hers. She could talk forever and it'd be awesome. Love Miss Vera. Miss Vera, I talked about fasting one time on a Sunday morning or a Sunday night service, and she kind of just took up the challenge, and she started fasting every Wednesday until the meal at our church. And that's when she'd break her fast, when she'd fellowship with her church family. And that became just a sweet day of intentional prayer for her on Wednesdays. And she really, more than one time over the course of the years told me how thankful she was for that and how the Lord was blessing that. And I just like, wow, that's a pretty cool way to do it. So when we say fasting, we're not saying you got to go nuts.
Yeah.
We're not saying
20 days.
Yeah. And I think sometimes people think that, and I remember hearing Stephen Furtick one time, who, is a pastor that some people listen to. Probably not my number one recommendation, but anyways, back in the day, I heard him one time, I can't remember if he turned 30 at the time. Whatever birthday he turned, he fasted for that many days. And I remember being a young, impressionable pastor thinking like, whoa, I want to do that, man. And it's like, sometimes we jump off into the crazy deep end when maybe saying, hey, I'm not going to eat lunch on this day of the week so I can focus more throughout the day on Jesus. Or I'm going to skip dinner this night to do that. Or maybe you can physically fast for a day during your week. But for you, again, recognizing that legitimately there are people with physical limitations. If you're diabetic and things like that, your blood sugar has issues, or again, like our students and children. If you're a student watching this, we wouldn't advocate a 15-year-old start skipping meals without talking to mom and dad and all that kind of stuff. But there are other things that you can abstain from intentionally for the sake of focusing on Jesus. So I just want all of y'all to pray about that. I don't even want to try to play Holy Spirit here. I just want to encourage some of you to try to do that and see how the Lord will grow you as you dedicate that time to Him, because we know the promise, draw near to Him and He will draw near to you. There's really nothing to lose here, right?
Yeah. No, for sure. You were talking about like Daniel and stuff, and he told us, man, he talked about this a lot, especially when we were in high school. And I remember, I believe it was my senior year, and it was kind of right before COVID. Twitter was kind of the biggest thing at the time. My age group, Twitter was the biggest thing. We all used Twitter. None of us had Facebook, right?
Oh yeah.
So right before COVID hit, I was like, man, I'm gonna get off Twitter. It's just I sat there for hours just reading tweets, watching sports clips, and all that stuff, and I deleted it. And I have not re-downloaded Twitter since my senior year of high school. And I went about 6 months, and I was like, man, this is really nice. Like I have a break from it. And then since then, I've realized like I really just did not need it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, flip side is obviously I have replaced that time spent on Twitter with other things, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a cycle if you're not intentional about it. And that was kind of the same case for me. I went into it with good motives that I was going to, take a break from this so I can focus on the Lord. And I probably did for a few weeks, maybe even a few months. But then eventually I replaced that distraction with something else, And so being intentional, I think, is the most important part.
Yeah.
And having people beside you who are going to help you be intentional, just accountability like we always talk about. But yeah, I'm going to try some things out.
Yeah.
Good encouragement.
Well, and kind of the heart of the message and the heart of the series will kind of pivot toward that, because before you start this fast, the heart check that Jesus introduced was the danger of doing it to be performative. And that's where the old flippity-doo-dah came in, right? I talked about I didn't talk about the backstory of it, but I was in my office at church one day, and actually I'll share a little bit of the backstory about it. I was living a pretty distracted life because of my phone. It wasn't, and I know I've not been immune to struggles with purity and things like that from time to time. And those squares that we keep in our pocket are not good for that, right? But it wasn't any struggle like that. It was really just a struggle of I have 4 kids and was living on my phone. As I think of Jason Isbell on that one line in one of his, I can't remember which song, but where he says, I fight the urge to live inside my telephone. And I was like, dude, that's me. I be living in that phone. And I actually listened to Paul Bowen, the pastor at First Buna. This was when I was still in Wichita, preach a sermon. And I don't even remember the text, but I remember him basically saying, man, some of us would be better off throwing those phones in the dumpster. And I'd already been feeling that. He said that. I'd already actually researched dumb phones a little bit at the time. And it was just like all these things lined up in that moment in my office. And I was like, okay, Lord. Like I felt like this was a God thing and the Lord was calling me to do this. I knew I knew I would have problems. The biggest problem was my text thread with Jimmy, Daniel, and Jared. For whatever reason, Apple does not play nice when you leave the Apple economy. It's very difficult. In fact, the only way we found a group message to work is we had to have the 4 of us and a random number 33. So we were texting to some 33, and that's how it worked when I had this device. So they made fun of me a lot. Like I said, they definitely shamed me and ragged on me from 10 hours away. So the biggest peer pressure I had was that. But in the midst of that struggle and trying to sort all that out, it really was a blessing.
Yeah.
It reduced my distractions so much. I was able to leave this. It has lights on the front that shows if you have a message or a missed call. So I didn't even have to open it. I think that's one thing about the smartphones. You have to kind of unlock it to see your notifications and all that. Here, I didn't even have to engage with it. I could glance at it and see if I'd missed anything. One thing you will realize when you're not checking your phone as much is you're not as important as you think you are. Like I could go on a Saturday and not get a text or a phone call sometimes. And I'd be like, whoa.
Yeah.
Surely this thing's not working. Yes, it was. You're just not, you check your phone 17 times a day, not because you're getting that many notifications, usually. So anyway, but the danger is somewhere along the way, what started off as a sacrificial thing that I felt like the Lord had called me to do turned to a pride thing, where all of a sudden I felt better than all of these drones around me that were living their lives on their telephones.
Yeah.
And, trying to take, listen, this is recorded on 2 really nice phones. Mine is the nicer one. For now, the boys are about boys are about to be able to upgrade, and then I'm going to be reduced, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. As nice as this is, a picture taken with this camera from 45,000 feet up in the bleachers at a 5-year-old football game, are you really going to need that all that years later? And you watched the game like this instead of with your 2 eyes watching your child play whatever sport they're playing, right? We're so busy trying to document everything that I think we sometimes miss life. So anyways, all those things I'm saying are true, but the heart became very smug and arrogant about it. And something that started out as a God thing. So I even shared with y'all the story. A God moment that I said yes to turned from a testimony into a testimony now ultimately about my pride.
Yeah.
And eventually I ended up going back to my iPhone that apparently still was too old, and I got mocked all the time for it until you gentlemen pressured me into buying the latest and greatest that now, less than a year, is not going to be the latest and greatest. So
Yeah.
don't even try to keep up, friends. That's the point of this message. Just give up.
Yeah, or you
Kidding.
could, if anybody's interested in a Canon R and a bunch of lenses, I'm going to sell all my things because I'm living in my screen.
You're just living in your screen,
videotaping stuff,
bro.
So
That's all you're doing.
yeah, sell it all.
So anyway, the danger is ultimately this word, performance. If you are living in a performative way, it's dangerous. The call to worship is not a call to perform. It's a call to bring an offering to the Lord. So our giving, our prayer, and our fasting must be done in a heart of worship. So really the crescendo of the message yesterday was these are just the three things Jesus chose to talk about. There's a lot of other ways. You can serve in youth ministry or in children's ministry in a way that makes it all about you. You can lead in the church in a way that makes it all about you. You can sing in your seat in the
And be
congregation
successful.
in a way that makes it all about you. And at the end of the day, we can end up wasting our lives because Jesus says, you've already gotten your reward. It's the recognition from other people. But your eternal reward is found when we do these things, all of our things, as an offering of worship to our King. So that's the call. So even as we've encouraged, we've had real practical conversations today about here's what it means to fast. But don't fast because you think it's going to make you extra spiritual around your friends. Fast because you know that drawing near to Jesus is worth it.
Yeah.
So, man, pray about it, find a way to fast, and draw near to Jesus.
100%, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. What we got next week?
I don't really know.
It's been really good. The past few weeks have been really, really good. They've been very intentional, very practical things that almost everything everybody can take away from it, grab hold of it, and go do it outside of church. And that is so important. And it also completely lined up with what the biblical text was actually meaning and the original meaning behind it. It was great. I really enjoyed it. I felt like there was a lot of feedback the past few weeks.
Yeah.
Just people I've heard, in conversation, just people talking about it, man. They've been really excited and stuff. And so I think it was a perfect way to start the season off.
Yeah.
Start the new year off. Or not new year, but new school year off.
Yeah.
It's been great. So
it's been fun, man. And the next 2 weeks do get heavy for the record because we're going to be talking about God and money. We're going to talk about God and anxiety. So we're going to talk about some real, we'll be talking about some real practical things but they're more personal for everybody. There's not going to be anyone the next couple weeks that doesn't deal with what we're thinking through.
A good deal, man.
Yeah.
See, that's all we
Family
got.
Sunday, also Sunday.
Oh, yeah, Family
So
Sunday.
our 1st through 5th graders will be in the room with us. We're excited about that. We're going to have a moment, kind of a children's message. We're going to have our music planned with them in mind. Even the preaching will be done in mind with the fact that we've got our 1st through 5th graders with us. If you have a kindergarten or pre-K or nursery, they will all be having their classes in the back. But our 1st through 5th graders will not have children's church in the gym. They will instead be with you, Mom and Dad, and we're excited about that.
I'll be watching, man. I'm not going to be here, but I'll be watching because I'm excited.
Well, he's out. He's taking his kids and running.
Yeah, I'm excited.
All right, y'all.
We'll see y'all
will
later.
talk to you real soon.
Bye.